Hey, what's up guys? It's Tip. In life, some things just go hand in hand. French fries and ketchup, milk and cookies, MMORPGs and raiding. And when it comes to raiding, vanilla World of Warcraft had no shortage of it. With over 50 bosses across 7 diverse instances, vanilla WoW still boasts the most endgame content in World of Warcraft history. But it wasn't just boss quantity that made vanilla raiding so great. Solid design philosophies such as challenging content, social camaraderie, and exclusive rewards are ultimately what forged the legacy of vanilla raiding that we all know today. Out of all the incredible qualities that define vanilla's raiding scene, its challenge seems to be the quality that has endured the most. And while the speed and complexity of vanilla encounters might seem dull to players accustomed to the neck-breaking pace of modern content, vanilla raiding was still difficult, albeit for different reasons. Back in 2005, the raiding system extended far beyond the artificial borders of an instance. A significant portion of raid-related challenges occurred out in the world, in preparation of the actual encounters. Before players could even set foot inside Vanilla's iconic 40-mans, a series of time-intensive requirements had to be met. The first and most obvious requirement was reaching level cap, a nearly 300-hour journey that tested the patience of even the most committed players. When a player finally reached level 60, pre-raid gearing took over as the primary grind, and with some endgame dungeons taking 4 hours or more to clear, you can imagine just how long the gearing up process actually was. Oh, and this was back before the LFG tool existed, so for most medium and low population servers, gearing up was doubly painful. When high-level dungeon gear was finally procured, including mandatory fire resist pieces, players were then directed back to the world, where they would be required to complete prerequisite quest chains prior to entering raids. Commonly referred to as attunements, these quest chains could take several hours or days depending on group availability. And if players were lucky enough to rush through these attunements, the most difficult challenge of all awaited them: finding 39 other committed players on their server who had also completed this grueling laundry list and who could consistently attend the guild's agreed upon raid times. I'd like to note that this was all before cross-realm technology, meaning that the only pool of players available to a recruiting guild were the players on their server. And seeing as server populations were capped between 2,500 to 3,500 concurrent players, I think you can imagine just how hard it could be to find people who met all of the minimum raid requirements and who were members of your own faction. If you thought finding 9 other people for your weekly heroic pug was hard, I've got news for you. The craziest part is, these were all just the requirements to enter a raid. Once players were lucky enough to lock down a consistent 40-man roster, infamous bosses such as Ragnaros and Cthulhu still awaited. In hindsight, Molten Core, Onyxia, and even Blackwing Lair weren't exactly the pinnacle of complex raid design. But that doesn't mean the bosses were easy mode. Due to the punishing nature of Vanilla's mechanics, wipes were still possible, and in some cases, inevitable. And when you take into account that vanilla raiders lack the mobility and AoE potential we have in modern WoW today, you can start to see why the early raids weren't simple cakewalks. I've already made a video comparing modern raiding to vanilla, so I don't want to talk about that too much. The point is, when you take into account all of the effort that went into raiding in the first place, you can see why many vanilla veterans consider the raid system to be such a brutal challenge. But it's that same challenge that made the experience so great. Overcoming obstacles after months and months of hard work is just so darn satisfying, even when the loot drops don't go your way. Oftentimes, teaming up with a group of like-minded individuals to accomplish something is reward enough. Working together has always been a staple of the MMORPG genre. Early text-based MUDs permitted cooperative play as a means of social interaction between players. But Vanilla WoW's raid philosophies didn't just permit social interaction, they nurtured it. By designing nearly all endgame content around group play, Vanilla taught level-capped players one very important lesson: it's a team effort. These 4 simple words echo deeply throughout all of Vanilla's game systems, but perhaps never more so than in raiding. We already mentioned how groups of players had to work hard together to complete attunements, but Vanilla's social dependency extended far beyond that. Due to the lack of a streamlined group finder tool, prospective raiders were forced to communicate with each other directly prior to raid formation. Communication was typically transmitted through various chat channels embedded within the game. By utilizing this unrefined system, players could freely introduce themselves to one another, engage in comedic banter, or segue into the more intimate communication methods such as whispers. While this might all seem trivial to you, I believe these hands-off, interface-free communication systems play a huge role in establishing server community, forging familiarity between players, and reminding us all that we're experiencing this adventure with other people, not with random names listed in queues. But more importantly, in the context of raiding, the lack of an LFG tool meant players had to rely on their own social output to remain active. This meant constant communication, networking, and reputation building between raiders, ultimately resulting in a tighter social experience. Social dependency in raiding is a large part of what made those 40 mans so memorable, and a huge reason why vanilla raiding is so sorely missed. By actively socializing and convening with their fellow server mates, players augmented their raid experience in-game, as well as nourished the social needs all of us humans have. And when a group of 40 players found themselves meshing well together and clearing content, vanilla presented them with the biggest cherry on top an MMO can offer: epic rewards. World of Warcraft raiding was never more rewarding than it was during vanilla. The first reward was the content itself, and the ability to experience it. This may not seem like much to those groomed in the LFR era, but back in Vanilla, TBC, and even Wrath, players could have no idea how bosses worked or even looked like until they actually saw them in Raid. Seeing epic monsters like Ragnaros emerge for the first time was absolutely mind-blowing, and felt better than any loot drop could. Well, maybe not. Like the modern raids of today, vanilla WoW raids dropped epic quality loot. The difference between then and now, however, was how impactful the gear actually was. Beyond serving as a flat DPS increase, vanilla raiding gear was also incredibly useful in PvP. This was largely due to the fact that PvP stat templates did not exist in 2005, and PvP-specific stats like resilience were not introduced until the Burning Crusade. This meant that most epic drops in vanilla raids could be easily used in PvP scenarios, and were sometimes preferable to the actual PvP rank gear. Beyond combat use, raid drops could also serve as cosmetic rewards. Seeing as vanilla gear's art detail increased linearly with level, raiding gear was almost objectively the coolest looking gear in the entire game. Level 60 raiders could strut through Ironforge with pride, knowing that their appearance made them stand out. This is one of the reasons why I'm personally against the post-kata transmog system. Diminishing the cosmetic value of current tier raid gear by allowing access to previous tier appearances removes one of the key incentives to raid: player ability to visually distinguish themselves from one another based on their merits. And speaking of players distinguishing themselves from others, vanilla raiding rewarded players with a priceless intangible that has long since vanished from World of Warcraft: prestige. Because of how difficult and time-consuming it was to even start raiding, a relatively small portion of players could actually do it. This meant that a server's active raiding base became akin to an exclusive fraternity, with more dedicated raiders receiving more respect for their efforts. Non-raiding players looked upon those who did in amazement, fantasizing about the day they would wield such spectacular glory. I know some people might dismiss this all as special snowflakey, but I counter with this. Recognition for hard work is a cornerstone of human psychology, and according to various studies conducted in the workplace, is more important to people than salaries. For years now, prestige in WoW has slowly slipped away, as Blizzard has taken away methods for players to set themselves apart from one another. Thankfully, in vanilla, meritocracy still reigns. Vanilla WoW raiding offered players more than any other game could. It offered a challenge that the committed could sink their teeth into. It offered a social experience only available in a true MMORPG. And it offered incredible rewards to those who were able to persevere through each obstacle in ways that no other version of Warcraft did. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why vanilla raiding was so great. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you liked what you saw, sub it up and stick around because we got more coming. A special thank you to all my friends on Patreon. You guys make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining our Classic WoW community, join our Discord channel in the link below. And for more Classic WoW content, news, and updates, you can follow me on Twitter as well. Have a wonderful day, fellas. And as always, tips out, baby!